Hello, beautiful souls. Today, we're talking about something that is so important and that I think we all experience at one point in our life. It's rebuilding our self worth and value after a breakup. And a breakup can be a friendship falling apart, a work relationship falling apart, or a romantic or intimate relationship falling apart. This is the I Care About You podcast. And my name is Juliana J., and I'm here to help you heal and grow and step into your power. Today, we're talking about something that many of us struggle with, myself included. It's a lifelong journey, I think, and that's our own self worth, self respect, self love, and just feeling like we matter. Breakups, they can make us feel lost and rejected, unlovable, not enough, that we don't matter, that we're insignificant. But here's the truth: your worth, your value, it was never dependent on the relationship. And today we're going to talk about how to rebuild your confidence and your self love step by step. So let's get into it. Now, before we begin, I want to tell you how I came to this topic. I was really reflecting. So I'm going through a breakup. It's really hard. It's an over 20-year relationship. A lot happened during that time. But it just reached an end point, and I'm going to try really hard not to cry about it. So I'm not going to talk about that relationship. I'm going to talk about my first marriage, which was over a decade, 10 years, and then it fell apart. And I was devastated. Even though my partner was abusive and an addict, he was violent, I spent most of my days really being afraid, trying to avoid him, but yet trying to please him at every turn. When that relationship broke up, I really felt this profound loss. Even though the people around me were saying stuff like, "Thank God you got out of that. I'm so happy for you. You did the right thing." I just really couldn't hear any of that. I don't know why I do know why I couldn't really hear any of that. And I couldn't see that I was brave or strong or that I was worth more. I just really couldn't see it. No matter what people said to me, I would be like, but who cares? I just couldn't see all those things or accept all those things. I couldn't accept that I was brave or strong for leaving the relationship, even though it took every freaking ounce of my being to crawl away from that relationship. And maybe I wouldn't have crawled away from it if it wasn't for people very close to me helping me to see that it was destructive. I just couldn't buy any of the stuff people were telling me. I thought it was nice they were telling me those things, but I guess in my mind, I thought it was placating me and not really true. What I did hear was in my head all the times my ex had put me down, when he cheated on me, how he used excuses like, "Well, you're just never home and you're not that good to me and you have all these failings. And so I had to look somewhere else and that person's prettier than you." And all the times he held me hostage, hit me, kept me from my friends and family, poisoned me against people who loved me, and berated me and isolated me and used manipulation to kind of keep me alone and powerless and not talking to other people who might have a different impression of the relationship. Those things were so ingrained in my brain that that's all that rattled around. And to me, the breakup just confirmed all the things that my ex said to me over that 10 plus year relationship. All the programming illustrated to me that I just wasn't good enough. I wasn't lovable. I had no value. I'm stupid. Still to this day, I'm working through so many aspects of that relationship and how it made me feel really small and insignificant. And honestly, I carried those things with me to other relationships that I had, especially in the work world or places where there was an authority figure. I have a lot of trauma, and um, I didn't really expect I would be so emotional about this. I have a hard time with like anger and things like that. So in work relationships and other relationships that I had, I didn't feel like I was worthy of certain things only because I was of the lessons I learned in that first relationship and the thoughts I had growing up as a child that, well, my whole worth is tied into relationship. I just carry those with me. And even now, I can see when it comes up now and I can shift that way of thinking. But for a long time, almost until like maybe 8 years ago, I realized that I was still carrying around that old relationship a little bit before I get super sad again and talk about why breakups hurt our self worth. What is that connection? Breakups don't just end the relationship, they shake our sense of identity. Maybe you ask yourself things like, was I not good enough? Did I do something wrong? Am I not smart enough to be in a relationship? Am I annoying like they say I am? Will I ever find love again? Am I too old? Do I have too much baggage? Maybe people just don't love me. Maybe I can't hold on to people because I'm just horrible. Maybe I'm ugly. All those things. I mean, I those things rolled around in my brain forever, still do some of them, and so much more. Just all that negative self-talk that you can develop when you feel insecure or you lose something or you're manipulated for a long time. It's almost like they're programming you to think negatively about yourself if you're in a manipulative or abusive relationship, which is kind of a different topic. Today, we're talking about how to work through the breakup itself. The truth is, when we invest so much of ourselves into a relationship, it's easy to tie your worth to that connection, especially if you're also sharing things like children, work identities, homes, physical things, human beings, family. It's so easy to tie your worth and your self definition to the relationship. So when it ends, you can feel like you've lost yourself or a piece of yourself. And it's a real loss. And I've done podcasts on loss and grief and shame. You can look at those too, because loss is not just the loss of someone that you loved due to death. It can be the loss in a relationship, can really leave you so unsettled and not really know how to move forward or who you actually are. But there's one thing that I want you to remember. Your value was never defined by that relationship or any relationship that you have. Your value is not tied to that relationship. You were worthy before that relationship, you were worthy during it, and you are worth it after it. The challenge is to rewire your brain so that you truly believe that. And when I talk about these things, I'm not talking about people who are sabotaging relationships or destructive or that kind of behavior. That's a different topic. I think I did a podcast on self sabotaging, and I'll probably do another one in the future. I'm not talking about actions where we sabotage ourselves and that ends a relationship. I'm talking here about a relationship ends for whatever reason, and you're walking away feeling like you're not worthy of anything, you don't matter, and you're walking away from your own identity, which was so tightly held in this relationship. It took me decades to understand that my worth was not tied to my relationships. I still struggle a little bit with feeling worthy and feeling like I matter. So, all that said about my personal story, which I had to kind of pause to get myself back together because it still hurts, you know? It still hurts on some level because loss is a very complicated matter, but it's also part of life. It happens. Just like during a breakup, we might say things that we regret later, and people say things to us that we can easily internalize as a definition of self. A lot happens in a breakup. Breakups don't just end a relationship. They shake our sense of identity, of who we are, of how we show up in relationships, of what we've been doing, of it can even profoundly shake things like, why do I live here? What am I doing in this life? Do I even like this job? Because maybe we've been people pleasing during the relationship and we've got into a lot of things that we wouldn't necessarily get into if we were on our own. But here's what I want you to remember. Your value is never defined by that relationship. You were worthy before the relationship, you were worthy during the relationship, and you now are worthy, and in the future, you'll be worthy. The challenge is to rewire your brain so you truly believe that. I thought that being in a relationship was necessary to prove my worth and to prove that I mattered. And if I was by myself, then I was basically invisible. That's what I grew up thinking was the truth. And that's what I took into every relationship. And when relationships ended, I picked up all that negative self-talk and I walked on with it. And I didn't think I could reprogram my brain or that there was a different truth out there. I let everybody else tell me what it was. So understanding self-worth and rewiring your brain and rewriting your story is really important in order to shift your beliefs about yourself. Your brain is wired to believe what you tell it repeatedly. It does not care about what the truth is or what is happening outside in the world. It takes what you tell it as the truth. There's something most people don't talk about. Self-worth isn't just an emotion, it's a neural pathway. Your self-talk defines what you think about yourself, and it creates a neural pathway, just a pathway of thought that's like quick for the brain. The brain likes to do that so that you don't have to actively think about every little thing. If you've spent months or years in a relationship where you felt unappreciated, abandoned, or unworthy, your brain has been wired to believe those things because you have been telling yourself those things for a long time. And your brain thinks it's true. But the good news is neural pathways can be rewritten and you can retell your story to yourself and shift what you believe. And you have to do this over time. There's a lot of different ways that you can do this, and we're going to talk about four, well, actually five. There's an over-encompassing one, and there's four core things that you can do to change your neural pathways and to rewrite how you think about yourself. Every time you repeat a thought, you strengthen the neural connection. This is why negative self-talk keeps you stuck because your brain believes what you tell it over and over and over again. So you need to tell it a new story over and over and over again. The key to rebuilding your self-worth is to actively create new thought patterns that reinforce your value. This means practicing positive affirmations and self-compassion consistently, not just once or now and again, but you have to do it daily, sometimes even multiple times a day, depending on how you feel you want to go about it, until your brain starts to believe it as the truth. You can say to yourself, and when you first start these practices we're going to talk about, that you might feel this way. A little silly if you look in the mirror and say, I am worthy, because you've created a neural pathway that says you are not worthy. So your brain goes, that's a lie. You're not worthy, remember? And you have to keep telling the story over and over again until the new neural pathway is created and your brain starts to believe it. Otherwise, your brain is in conflict with what you're saying. The key to rebuilding it is to have repetition until your brain starts to believe that it's true. Meditating is a great way to reinforce these four things we're going to talk about. And it's just meditating on new thoughts, imagining them in your mind, playing out scenarios where the new thoughts are validated. Your brain doesn't know the difference between what you think and what is actually out in the environment. It's only going by what you think. Imagine a positive thought about yourself and then play out a snippet of real life over and over again. And your brain will start to create a new pathway with a new thought because it believes that to be the truth. This meditation can be really quick. It can be like 3 to 5 minutes. I'll go over how to do that at the end. And it's kind of like a positive daydream where you role play your new self and new thoughts. It's like just role playing these positive outcomes. And you can even do it in your car while you're driving. I do this all the time. I role play something that of how I want it to turn out, or something that affirms my worth or my knowledge base, or that I matter. I replay that out while I'm driving, little scenarios. And you can do that too, actually talking it out with yourself, playing a scene over and over in your mind. It doesn't mean that old beliefs won't crop up now and again, because believe me, as you saw earlier or heard earlier in this podcast, they can come up and be right there on the surface again. But when they do, if you do this work of changing the neural pathways, you're more likely to recognize what they are. For example, I retrained my brain not to think that I was only worthy of attention if I wore these certain clothes that either people I dated in my life said were sexy, or partners would come shopping with me and pick out the most uncomfortable stuff that I didn't like. But I really believed that if I didn't wear exactly what society and these people were telling me to wear, that I wouldn't be lovable. And that's my own internalized belief about it. And I had to shift that to be more like, I will be magnetic and attractive, and people will see my beauty if I show up in spaces authentically as who I am. And that includes what I choose to wear. If I show up as my true self, I will have magnetism and I will attract the right people. Because for real, I never liked wearing any of those clothes. I know some people do really like wearing very feminine clothes and things like that, and that's fantastic. If that's authentically who you are, that's great. No, I'm not saying anything about that. What I'm saying is for me, I was showing up in these costumes. They felt like costumes because they weren't really me and who I was. And I needed to retrain myself to think that I could still be important to people if I dressed how I wanted to dress and not what people were expecting. Let's go over the 4 steps to rebuilding your self-worth and rewiring your brain. This is the action and application section. So let's talk about how to actually rebuild your self-worth and change those neural pathways. So step 1, make a self-worth list. Grab a notebook or your device and write down 10 things that make you amazing. And the 10 things can not have anything to do with this relationship or any relationship. These are 10 things about you specifically only. It can be things like, I am kind, I'm funny, I am creative. I'm a good friend. I'm a great strategist. I can make up stories, whatever it is, 10 things. There are way more than 10 things that make you amazing. There are way more than 10 things that make you amazing. But to keep it manageable, let's do 10 things. This reminds you that your worth is not tied to a person, but who you are at the core. And I suggest after you make this list of 10 things, you also then contemplate why you think they're amazing and how they pertain only to you and how they are gifts that you might give others, the gift of laughter, but that's what's amazing about you specifically. Number 2, positive affirmations. I talk about this a lot. I have a ton of podcasts on positive affirmations. I'll have a ton more. Remember that your brain believes what you tell it. So let's replace the negative thoughts with empowering ones. You can use affirmations in many different ways. You can write them down. You can say them over and over to yourself. You can say them in the mirror to yourself every morning, which is probably the easiest and quickest thing to do. So look in a mirror, look directly in your eyes, and say things to yourself like, I am worthy of love and respect. I have value and it's not defined by relationships. I am whole just as I am. I am worthy. At first, it might kind of seem fake or embarrassing that you're doing that, but this is part of the practice of rewiring your brain, letting go of the old beliefs and picking up these new beliefs. And when you repeat them over and over, the more you repeat them, the stronger those new pathways become in your brain. And science shows that repetition literally changes the brain structure. So don't skip this step. It's really powerful. Number 3, do the exhale exercise, which is about letting go. I do this all the time. It's really simple. Just close your eyes, take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, imagine letting go of the need for external validation. For example, you can breathe in what you want to think about yourself. Breathe in, I am worthy. Breathe out, I do not need their approval. Breathe in, I am lovable. Breathe out, I do not need their love to be whole. And just, do this for a couple of minutes. I used to do this all the time at work when something was either frustrating or I felt like, oh no, we're in trouble or something like that that happened at work. I would just Take a few deep breaths and remind myself that I'm smart and I'm capable and I'm really good at what I do, and this too shall pass. And then I go on. So you can use this exhale exercise in many different forms for many different things, but it helps you to retell your story to yourself, that it becomes the way of being. And four, focus on self-expansion, not on moving on. This is really important. So many of us work on moving on. We have all these conversations with our friends about moving on, dating someone new, getting over the person, getting over the relationship. But don't focus on that. Focus on expanding yourself. Try something new. Maybe you take a class, maybe you start a new project, maybe you travel. If you can't travel far away, you can travel locally to new coffee houses or new places to walk or new neighborhoods to run in or whatever. But just expanding yourself in small ways. Read books you would never normally read, watch things on TV you would never normally watch. Take interest in something new and start expanding your knowledge base about it. Growth is the best way to prove to yourself that you are bigger than this heartbreak or this relationship and how you felt it had defined you. So self-expansion. And the umbrella over all of this, I already talked about it, is meditation. You can use all these things in your meditation practice. Your self-worth list. You can meditate on all the things that are amazing about you. Take one at a time. Think about it deeply. Imagine scenarios where you are that amazing quality. Imagine every detail. Now, when you do these meditations, imagine every detail. What are you wearing? What does it smell like? What time of year is it? What's the weather like? What time of day is it? What are you wearing? Who's around? What's the environment look like? Imagine everything in the greatest detail you possibly can, because remember, your brain doesn't know the truth from what you think to what's actually happening. Meditate on those amazing things about yourself. Meditate on the positive affirmations you create for yourself. If one of your affirmations is, I am worthy of love and respect, visualize what that looks like. What does I am worthy of love and respect actually look like? That makes the words so much more powerful. You can meditate on the things you're letting go of, like the exhale exercise, and you can meditate on your self-expansion. What are some things you want to expand on? And imagine yourself doing them, being an expert in them, knowing them, going there, stepping out of your comfort zone and doing that. And your meditation can be really simple. It can be 3 to 5 minutes. Just find a place to rest that's comfortable, where you're not going to be disturbed, and set yourself up well, like yoga teachers always say. Get in a position that's comfortable. Maybe you need some blankets and pillows. Get super duper comfortable, and then take a few grounding breaths in and out, long and slow, and then do the meditation practice for whatever that is. And if you set a timer for 3 to 5 minutes, when the timer goes off, you close your meditation by saying something like, I am worthy of all this new abundance. And then take a few breaths to ground yourself back down into the real world and go on with your day. And that's a very simple way to get into meditation that doesn't take a lot of time, but allows you to think deeply about these things. Now, if you've never meditated before, when you first start, it's really hard to quiet your mind with other things you're worried about, and give yourself some grace with that. It's going to take a little while before you can settle yourself into a meditation and think about what you want to think about for that 3 to 5 minutes, because a lot of other thoughts are going to come in as you're doing that, and that's totally okay. It's totally okay. I've been meditating for a really long time, and still, that happens to me all the time. That's just part of meditating. So those are the things. Meditate on the 4 things we talked about: making a list of how you're amazing, using positive affirmations, the exhale exercise and letting go, and self-expansion. Once you do all these things for a while, how are you going to feel when you reclaim your self-worth? Imagine waking up one day and realizing you no longer need their validation, or basically anyone's validation. Imagine looking in the mirror and seeing the person who is strong, whole, and worthy, just as they are. Imagine believing those things about yourself, which can be another meditation. What would that person look like? When you do this work, you'll realize that you care less and less and less about people possibly judging you for things. If you're anything like me, other people's judgments is super duper powerful, and or used to be. It's not so much anymore. I wouldn't be doing this podcast if that was actually so powerful. It's not that powerful anymore because I've done the work to let go of the fact that I need other people's validation to prove to me that I'm worthy, because I am worthy and I am whole just as I am. And that's the work that I did has given me the opportunity to be in that space. But I had to do the work. Here's another thing. The pain of a breakup is temporary, but the love you build for yourself, that lasts for your lifetime. This breakup will fade. And like you saw at the beginning of the podcast, sometimes the emotions around the breakup will resurface, will come back to you. A thought you thought about an old relationship in an old relationship might come back to you, especially if it's reinforced in a new relationship. But you can recognize that if you've done the work and do work to not incorporate that into who you are as a person. And you can continue to build love for yourself. And that you can take with you wherever you go and in any relationship. I'll leave you with this final thought. You were whole before them. You are whole now, and you will always be whole. If you liked this episode, please give it a thumbs up or rate it in a positive way. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you want more self-love and healing content, make sure you subscribe or turn on notifications, whatever platform you're using to listen or watch, so that you don't miss an episode. And drop a comment if you can to let me know what makes you worthy just as you are. I would love to hear from that. And also what kind of material you would like to see in future podcasts too. I'm happy and I love it when people bring new things to me. So many of the podcasts I've done have been because someone brought me an idea or asked me for help. So please let me know. And if you can't on the platform that you're listening to, or you're in the car or something like that, you can always go to my website, talk to me there, and I'll link that in the description. I also want to remind you about my book, Reasons to Live, which I don't have a copy in front of me, and I should, which has a lot of exercises on building up your self-love and self-worth. It's not only about when you're in extremely dark times, although the focus of the book is that, but there are two sections in there. How to find yourself through dark times, like a breakup, how to come out of it with resilience and self-love and compassion and connection, and also how to help others do the same thing. So even if you're feeling like you're in dark times, it's a great resource, and I hope you pick it up and look at it, share it with others. So take care, my beautiful friends. Be kind to yourself and know that I love you and I support you. And this too will change. I know it's hard right now. I know it feels like you're lost and you're dealing with loss and you don't know what to do next. And there's so much uncertainty. It's okay to have all of those feelings. But when you're ready, work on your own self-worth within yourself and realize any relationship you have doesn't make you who you are. You make you who you are. So take good care, my friends.